Hello everybody, I'm Mr. R and this is the Rondinelli Project. I'm going to start a new series called Tips from the Tackle Box. I thought that would be pretty cool to do. For those of you that don't do a lot of fishing, probably pretty helpful. And I'll share some of my tips and tactics that I've learned along the way and just general information that makes you better anglers. Today's tip from the tackle box is going to be the slip bobber. Let's take a look. First thing you need to do is these slip bobbers you can get at Walmart. You can get them just about any tackle place, but they come with 3 bobber stops. You take your line and you run it through the metal loop, which is a piece of wire. Once you run it through that metal loop, you grab behind the bead and slide that onto your line. It automatically puts it on the line for you, so you don't have to worry about trying to see to do that. Once you do that, the bobber stop is above the bead, and then you can move that bobber stop anywhere on the line. You can move it 15 feet up if you want to, if you're in 15 feet of water. And the bobber will slide up, float up to the top until it hits that bead, and then it'll stop. And that's exactly what you want. That's why it's called a slip bobber. You can slip the bobber any depth, and you won't have that big length of line out in front of your rod when you try to cast line out, which makes it very, very nice. Then you slip your bobber all the way through the line, through the bobber, and once you do that, you grab it on the other end, pull it through. And what I like to do once you pull it all the way through, there you can see the slip bobber on the line. It'll float all the way up to the stop. At that point, I take and tie on whatever you're going to fish with, whether you're fishing with a hook or and worm, or you're fishing with a hook and minnow, or in this case I'm using a jig. And I'm going to insert the jig body through the back of the jig and then push that eyelet all the way out to the front. I love these 1.5 inch tube baits. These are great for crappies, which is one of the things I like to fish for. Once you poke the eyelet out through, you want to tie that onto your fishing line. And so you grab your fishing line and run it through the eyelet. And I'm like blind as a bat, so I'm getting older. It's hard for me to see 4-pound test. But once you run that through the eyelet, you use a simple fisherman's knot and you spin it around 8, 9 times, 10 times. And then put the line tag end back through the loop near the eyelet. Once I do that, I pull that tight. I'm going to pull it tight here in just a sec. Gosh, to be 18 again. Anyway, you pull that tight, and once you pull that tight, you got your jig tied on one end. And at that point, I trim the tag line. That's the extra amount of line hanging out there. And you've got your bait, artificial or real, tied onto the end. And now you can attach a split shot, which is what I'm about to do. And the purpose for the split shot is twofold. It keeps the bobber from sliding all the way down and hitting your bait. And it keeps, if you're using live baits, say you were using a minnow, it keeps the minnow from swimming up. So it really has 2 purposes. But there's your jig on one end, and then you have your split shot, and there you can see how the bobber slides up and down the line. So you have the bobber, slides up and hits that, and if you want to adjust the depth, you just take your bobber stop and slide it up the line. That will determine the depth of your bait. It could be anywhere from 3 feet to 50 feet if you want it. Depends on the area you're fishing and the depth of the lake. And that's how you do a slip bobber. Pretty cool, and it lets you adjust your bait immediately to any type depth you might need. Fantastic for crappies. If you're drift fishing, even if you're casting and retrieving, you can keep that bait at a constant depth, and it's not a pain to move the bobber depth. And that's how it's done. I hope that was beneficial, and that concludes our first episode of Tips from the Tackle Box. And there you have it, Tips from the Tackle Box. I'm Mr. R, and this is the Rondinelli Project. If you've never used a slip bobber before, try it. See what you think. It's great for fishing different depths. Until next time, we gone.